Open your Bible to Psalm 40. We're going to read the first 5 verses. And then we're going to skip down to verse number 12. Probably going to spend several weeks in this. I wish I could be one of them preachers that say, you know what, I'm going to spend 2 weeks and we'll be done with it. Psalm 40, 17 verses. We'll probably be in it, I don't know, probably a month. I send in Brother Fielder, that blows his mind.
He said that.
It blows his mind because and the difference between he and I is so comical. His outline is as detailed as mine, or more so. It's just what he covers and skips. I stop and break down. It's the only difference. But he doesn't know that, and if you don't tell him that, I don't know that. I won't tell him that, and everything be good. He told me, he said, I bet you could make this stretch out over 2 services, couldn't you? And one time he gave me a verse. I said, no, it's the last time I preached it took me 4. He goes, hey, people, it's the little things in the verses that we need to look at. And I want you to be able to relate to it. If I just cover it for the sake of covering it, you don't get nothing out of it, I've not done any good. You know, I'll give you this one real quick. I have 2 years of college algebra. Now, let me tell you how I have it. I only passed high school algebra because nobody could steal 2nd or 3rd. I'm being honest. I'm being honest. I mean, I thought I was going to have to cut cards with the teacher to graduate because of algebra. But preacher, you say, I got 2 years of college algebra. The difference is, when I was in the military, and everything you do in electronics is all about equations. But those equations have a purpose. So when you learn resistance and capacitance and all of these phrases and all of these formulas, there is a purpose to figuring it out. That made sense to me. Because now I can look at the voltage going through the resistor. I can see the amperage as it drops. I can see the capacitor as it charges and sends the voltage out. And I could read it. That made sense to me. But to give me a problem on a chalkboard without a purpose in life means nothing to me. Absolutely not. I don't want you to read the Bible where you're looking at it and you're seeing an equation on the chalkboard. I want you to read it to where, hey, this makes difference to me because it's real to me. And that's the reason why I slow down more than a lot of people do, because I want you, next time you read this, I want you to remember some things. Or when the devil comes and knocks you on the shoulder this week and lets you know that he's still here, that you'll remember, guess what? There is hope because God is still on the throne. That's the whole thought in Psalm 40. I'm going to give you the sum up to Psalm 40 right now. I'm in a bad shape. I did it myself, but God's still here. Now that's Psalm 40. You can write 17 verses. I can give it to you in 2 statements. Notice in verse number 1. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit and out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear, and shall trust in the Lord. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust, and respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward, that cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more, listen, they are more than can be numbered. Skip to verse 12. For innumerable evils have compassed me about. Mine iniquities have taken hold upon me, so that I'm not able to look up. They are more than the hairs of mine head, therefore my heart faileth me. David is writing of a time in his life that David is in an absolute mess. And as you read this, some of the problems are David's. I'm going to tell you this, and I don't want you to go crazy with this, but I'm going to give you something. I want you to take it to heart. Most problems we face in our life, if we will be honest with ourselves, we bring some of them upon us. Not every problem. You know, it's like me making the statement. I'll make a statement to you right now. All illness is because of sin. Now, I'm not saying you're sick because of sin in your life. I did not say that. But when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, sickness and death has been with us ever since. So you can be the greatest Christian that ever lived, and guess what? You're still in a sinful body, and illness can still come find you. So for me saying, hey, if you're sick, it's because of sin in your life, I did not say that. But I am saying that illness is part of our world because sin is in this world, and sickness and death travel hand in hand. How many people do you know that die after being sick? But not everybody dies after being sick. I want you to understand what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that everybody that dies from sin or dies from sickness is because they have immediate sin in their life. Did not say that. But the curse of sin is upon all of us, and that curse of sin will bring sickness and death and sorrow. But if we look close enough because of that curse, why don't we look a little closer, and sometimes it is because of sin in our life. Sometimes the problems that we're in is because decisions that we've made that's gotten us there. Now, not every decision in your life is going to be horrible. And aren't you glad God doesn't judge us near as hard as He could? Well, I'm so thankful of that. I'm so glad that God doesn't judge us near as hard as He could. Because God can take us behind the woodshed anytime He wants to and dust our britches and be right. I don't know of anybody, and I'm not trying to be ugly in any way. Brother Perkle, Brother White, two fine men, we loved them to death. They were friends of ours. Gladly call them friends. And they'll tell you in a heartbeat, God had every right to take us behind the woodshed anytime He wanted to. Why? None of us are perfect. Some of us make bad decisions. Like all of us make bad decisions. Not all the time. But sometimes we make bad decisions. And sometimes we just can't seem to help but make bad decisions. David finds himself in this situation. Trouble is all around him. If you notice, he uses two references. They are more than can be numbered in verse number 5. Verse number 12, he said, they're more than the hairs of mine head. David wanted you to know that the trouble in the situation he was in was major. It wasn't that David had one or two things going on in his life. David's life was just road graded over. You know, if you ask David, David, could you name what problems you're in? I know y'all have seen the people, and I'm not trying to make too light of this, but we've all been there. Have y'all been around people that you don't want to ask how they're doing?
Long story.
Because they're like the little kid with the Christmas list. They just kick the roll out and start reading, and it rolls out to the back door, and they start reading one problem at a time. That's pretty much the situation that David's in. David said, I don't have one problem, I don't have two problems, I don't have 10 problems, I don't have 100 problems. I got problems everywhere. more than the numbers of the hairs of your head. Now, I've seen a few people that wouldn't be considered many problems. But God's not talking about them. He's talking about somebody that's got a full head of hair. How many hairs do you have on the top of your head? I will tell you this. You'll never count them before some of them are going to depart. And some will take its place. Now, I'm not a scientist by no means. But I do think the number of the hairs on the top of your head fluctuates from time to time. Why do you know that, preacher? Because God said in Matthew chapter 6, not a hair falls from the top of our head that He doesn't know about it. Now, what should that mean to you? That should mean to you that God is concerned about the smallest detail of your life. Now, I'm going to pick on women for one reason. Women's hair is normally long enough to get caught in the brush, and most men's are not. If they're biblical, it's not. With that being said, how many women do you look at the hairbrush and you see hair in that brush? See, men are different. We find our hair on the sink and on the counter and on the floor. Right or wrong? And most women's is wrapped around a brush. If they use a brush, that's where their hair is. How do you know that? Shut up. We ain't talking about my problem, talking about yours. But don't we know that our hair is always fluctuating in number? And God says, I know exactly how many hairs you have on the top of your head right now. If God is worried about something as insignificant as the number of the hair on top of your head, is He not concerned about bigger problems in your life that's really bothering you? How many of y'all are really concerned if you lose 5 hairs this week? No. Nathan ain't here, or Nathan be saying. Nathan's fighting all he can. Daniel said, I don't care. It's done.
Take it all off.
Of course, and Joe just back there pouting his and going, I got more hair than all y'all put together. And he does. Cody's just pretty much at a standstill. But you know what? We are concerned. There's nothing more heartbreaking to me than a bald woman. One that wants to look like a lady. I ain't talking about this new preppy age where all the women want to be bald to prove they can. I ain't talking about them. I'm talking about these that you could tell they want to do something. There is nothing that doesn't stop us, because we pick at men for going bald, but it's pretty much acceptable. In fact, now it's pretty much a style. There's a lot of people that are bald today, a lot of men that are bald today by choice. They have hair. I'm not saying they have a full scalp, but they have enough hair to have hair. They choose to cut it off. But there's nothing as pitiful as looking at a lady that is well kept, trying to look right, that's bald-headed. Our hair is so thin, when you look at it, you see to the scalp. Now, we understand that bothers those people. God said, I'm more concerned about your real problems than you are about them. But for the rest of us, if we lose 15, 20 hairs a week, we don't care. But God said, I'm concerned about every hair that comes out of the top of your head. Not only that, didn't He say that He's concerned about the sparrows that fly? Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but a sparrow isn't high on the pecking order when it comes from God coming down to the earth. But He said, I'm concerned about every sparrow that flies. He makes a reference also in that same chapter of the lilies of the field. God is more concerned about the problems in our life than He is the problems in creation. And He said, not a sparrow falls from the sky that I do not know about. That's important. Why? Because we have no idea what troubles face us ahead. I don't know if y'all have been ordering food or going to the grocery store and looking around, but things at times look very, very thin. Extremely thin. Anorexic in some cases. And they've said the food shortage hadn't hit yet.
When it's gonna get real bad.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Because I can't find no French fries.
Let me tell you, they're actually talking by midsummer, about 50% of the food you're seeing now will no longer be available. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to tell you, even in those situations, God's still concerned about the hair that's on top of your head. The clothes that you wear, where you lay your head down, the sparrows that fly in the sky, and the lilies of the field. That doesn't change. So that's the mindset that David's writing from. I've got problems everywhere. I got more problems than I can count. But God's still God. God is still God. God is still doing great things. Notice a couple of things when you get into verse 1. Probably the most important statement in this psalm is verse number 1. I waited patiently for the Lord. Waited. I waited for the Lord. That's the way it actually reads when they translate it directly from the Hebrew. What David's saying is, I could panic. I could throw a fit. And guess what? Some of these problems I'm facing, they're mine. I own them. But instead of panicking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait patiently for the Lord. I want to give you Bourne's thought from Bourne's translation on patiently. I'm going to wait with a mouth shut. That's what that means. I'm going to wait patiently. Now, I'm going to give you the direct opposite of that. Have you seen a child Christmas morning? They have no patience at all. They want to get underneath that tree and get what's theirs then. Now see, Nathan was the child that nobody had. Nathan was a funny child. He would normally ask for one thing, and that's what he wanted. And it would be the smallest of things. One year he wanted a hamster. He wanted a hamster. That's what he wanted. So we made him open the hamster first. We already had the cage and everything previously, and everything was done. He goes in there and he puts the hamster in the cage, and he goes and he sits down on the couch. His brothers is digging toys out. And Nathan, are you going to get your presents underneath the tree? I got my present. There's other presents under the tree. Why? I got what I wanted. One year, believe it or not, in his closet, he wanted a tap light so he could see stuff.
Oh, no.
A $4.99 tap light.
Oh, no.
Happiest boy you ever seen. Went, stuck it on the wall, tapped it, made sure you could see his clothes, tapped it off, went back, sat on the couch. It was done. His Christmas was over. Everything else we gave him was a letdown. I got what I wanted. What's this? I don't need this. Most children are not that way. Most children are tear, rip. Or do we wait patiently when all chaos breaks around us? Or do we wait like that child on Christmas morning, literally panicked out of sight? Distressed, distraught. And you can tell it because you watch the conversation of people. You know, some things bother people and they'll mention them occasionally. Some people just get run over with problems, and you can tell that's all they talk about. It's all they talk about. The problems get the best of them. They're not waiting patiently. They're waiting panicked. And that's the problem that we get into. If we're not careful, problems panic us. Why? Because we all like smooth sailing. We all like life without problems. How many of y'all would like a week without a bad phone call, a bad bill, or a problem at all? How many of y'all, if I could pick out my ink pen right now and say, I'm going to write y'all an excuse for a whole week, you won't have a bad situation this week, how many of y'all would take it? Everybody in the building would take it. God said, I'm going to give you to where these problems are mine. So you can learn to wait patiently and not panicked. We all have a tendency to panic. That's who we are. That's our nature. You have two types of people in this world. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this in jest, but I actually mean it. There are two types of people. People that get stressed out over money situations, and people that pay their bills with a 5-gallon bucket. You don't know how to pay a bill with a 5-gallon bucket? They get a 5-gallon bucket and they set it in the floor. They go on the other side of the room, they pick up their bills, and they throw the 5-gallon bucket. The ones that land in the bucket get paid. If you don't land in the bucket, you don't get paid. And they throw it in the bill. Hey, if none of them hit that week, they get to go eat out 3 times. That's the way they live. And it doesn't bother them. Most people are not that way. Our 5-gallon bucket is a whole living room for us, so it don't matter where it lands, we feel responsible to pay for it.
A preacher when you just forget to pay it and then you come home and all the businesses are closed, you don't have no water or electric.
Oh, no.
And you're like, you're calling your neighbors, you don't have electric?
Oh, no.
Yeah?
That's it. We paid our bill.
Yeah.
Ours was on time.
I did that. Water and electric.
I seen one the other day. This lady made one of these smart aleck things on Twitter, and she said, men need to understand that women only like men with power. So he typed a response. I just paid my electric bill, baby. You need to talk to him, right? You need to talk to him, Carrie. But don't we, you stop and you think, that's the world we live in. Most of us, we get panicked by situations. And if we're not careful, they dominate our life. Rather than looking at Christ, the light at the end of the tunnel, we think the light at the end of the tunnel is attached to a train. We've seen Wild E. Coyote in the Roadrunner. Every time he went in that tunnel and seen a light, it was never good for the coyote. It was always bad. But people, we have a light. It's Jesus Christ. Let me give you 2 verses to show you. Go to Exodus chapter 14. And I'll tell you a joke on this one. Exodus 14, verse number 13. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Now, we had problems at the church one time, and y'all know me, I'm nice, sweet, and adorable. I don't care what people say about me. There was a whole bunch of them got mad and said they were going to leave. And my wife came over that Sunday morning, went back to the house and get dressed. My wife, being the nice, preacherly wife that she is, she said, honey, she said, I got a Bible verse about this. I said, okay. And that's the verse you quoted. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. I said, what's better than my verse? So what's your verse? I said, let me flee this city. I'm about to destroy it. But I like mine better. Mine was a better verse. People, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Don't panic. People around you are going to panic. But can I ask you a question? Are you going to act like you've been here before? This isn't your first problem. See, it's like you watch people in pressured situations. And I'm not picking on anybody's genetics, because genetics plays a part of this. But people that are experienced at situations handle it better than those that are not. It's just a fact of life. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. But you take some of our elite forces. I was reading on one not long ago. When he was with the Green Beret, started Ranger, went to Green Beret. He was in 75 live fire situations with combat troops. Now, when the first bullet flies by that panics everybody else, is it going to bother this guy that's been out there for 75 battles? No. He's going to act like he's been there before. We as Christian people ought to act like we've had trials and tribulations before, because we have. This isn't the first trial, and it won't be the last trial. So we shouldn't panic. We should wait patiently, because we've been here before. I give you one in sports. Used to, back before they messed football up. I used to watch a ton of football. And Barry Sanders would run in the end zone every time he scored a touchdown. He'd just hand the ball to the ref and run off the field. And all these other guys would dance and throw the ball and act like they just created some great thing. And they asked Barry Sanders one time, said, Barry Sanders, why don't you do that? He said, I did that one time. My father looked at me and said, Barry, you want to plan on scoring one touchdown? You ought to act like you've been there before and act like you're going to be there again. So every time he'd score a touchdown, he'd just hand the ball to the ref and run off the field. We as Christian people all act like this is not the first time we've been in trouble. First time we've been in problems. First time we've been in bad situations. And by the way, it's not going to be the last. Go to Lamentations chapter 3. Lamentations chapter 3. Look at verse number 25 and 26. The Lord is good unto them that wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. It's good that a man hope. God is the answer. God's the key. Salvation's coming. Victory will be here. It is good that a man hopes. But then he said, quietly waits. People, I'm just encouraging you tonight. I don't know what the future's going to hold. But I've seen a few signs along the way and it don't look good. I'm not trying to poke fun at nobody tonight. But you look at the world that we live in. Satanic churches are suing schools because they can't get into elementary school. They want to teach sex education and gender identification to kindergarten up. Hello. They want to teach CRT. And what that means very simply is this. We, because of our skin color, are the worst form of humanity that's ever walked on this earth. All the problems in the world are our problems. We're the curse. We need to get out of the way and let everybody else run it because we've made a mess out of everything. I will agree that the leaders of the world, and especially the United States, have made a mess because of greed and corruption. Look at the Clintons. Look at the Obamas.
It's still there.
Well, I will tell you something, though. Spotify would not renew Obama's contract.
Oh, yay.
In case you don't know, Obama's the one who set up Netflix. By the way, Netflix stock has gone from $700 a share to $215 a share in 52 weeks. They're dropping subscribers like crazy because they've decided they're going to be like Disney. They're going to put homosexuality in everything. There is a phrase these companies are not understanding. Do you know what the phrase is? Go woke, go broke. Every company that's decided we're going to cater to the alphabet people, the people that don't know what gender they are. And I love these new ones. My gender is fluid. What does that mean? Today I'm a he, tomorrow I'm a she, and the next day I'm a they. You got a birth certificate, right? What does it say? But that don't mean nothing. It's not what I am. God only made two sexes, male and female. But you know, we pumped it through school, through sex education. In the last 2 years, these children have been home and they have watched TikTok. All these transgenders, and these transgenders have taken over, buddy. Everybody wants to claim they're something they're not. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you get to heaven, you're going to find out you're the gender you were born. Period. Male and female. That's it. God didn't make a third. There's no alphabet people. When you get to heaven, you're going to find out there's only two genders. Male and female. Man and woman. I'll prove it to you. It takes two genders to have a child. Two of the same can't have a child. Am I right or wrong? Oh, they're going to adopt? And what's going to happen is a Christian can't adopt, but they can. They'll restrict you because you can't give them a good home. And these alphabet people can give them a good home. People were living in a sick, perverted world. And it happened in the last few years. This hadn't been going on the whole time. This hadn't. This has happened in the last few years. We've actually made perversion out of everything that we can in this country. We got problems on every hand. Trials and tribulations we've never faced. Can I be honest with you? We brought most of it on ourselves. Poor parenting brought 90% of it on. If I'd have gone in my house and told my father that I was going to shave my legs and put on a skirt, my children would all be walking with a limp from the beating I would have got. And I'm not talking about what happened to you? My daddy thought he'd be crazy. And Granddad said something. And Granddad didn't like it. Oh, you want to be that? Oh, we're going to get you all the support we can get you. We're going to take you down to the clinic, get you on whatever hormone you don't need to get no more. We're going to get you something else. They want to give hormone blockers to children. A child don't even know what world they're in. And we're going to let them stop being whatever God created them because we know better than God. Only to find out that many of these people have gotten in their late teens and 20s and said that it was the worst mistake they ever made. But do we listen to them? No, because we're smarter than them. Wait patient on the Lord. That's our hope. That's our strength. That's our help. That's our joy. That's our sanity. That's our life. Let us learn to wait patient on the Lord.